Hello and welcome back for the analysis part. And right now we can see how the session went on, and we can see that we won something like 3 buy-ins and about 16 bucks. But our EV line didn't like the session today. But I think one important part of note is that we outthrew the opponents a lot during the earliest 12 tournaments. I think we outthrew our opponents most in the 1.5s and 3.5s. But it wasn't the source of our wins, it was more like the source of our wins was also a lot of solid stealing for our equity. And there are some horrible games in the $15 games. As we can see in the $15 games and $7 games, the EV adjusted pretty much gone wild. And as you can also see that our in the money wasn't that good, but when all the money finishes are wins, then you are making money in these games. And I think that the marked hands are the part that we are waiting about. So there were some hands that I'm not sure did I play it correctly, and some hands that I think that will benefit in having some mathematical views. And in here, mental raises, and when I shove, his pot odds will be 34%. Okay, he might fold something, because if ICM is taking into account, it would be closer to 37% that he would need in this situation. When it goes to 37%, he should be folding hands that are not solid. And in this situation, I think he called with a hand that might be slightly questionable. Even more questionable than the rock tunes we rocked with during our break. And let's see, full ring, paste from clipboard. Opponent is min raising. Load up folds. And the question also is that what his opening range should be there. I think that in this situation, when all of the guys are so short behind him, so there shouldn't be an opening range, there should be pretty much a shoving range. And I think if 25% would be a good guesstimate for it. And I need to close the door. I don't know if you can hear it on the screen, but stream. But there's a lot that I can hear through the door. So it's something that makes my concentration weaken a bit. In this sort of situation that we can see in this hand, if he's at most about 7.5 big blinds deep with opponents. He should be mostly just folding or shoving. And actually he can be shoving a lot more. He can be shoving 37%. And 10-7 suited is about on the edge. And if he's shoving, then we are calling with the ace-jack suited for sure. But I think if he's shoving with this sort of a range, I think that he's going to play pretty well. Pretty well in this situation. So shoving 10-7 suited would be a good play. But if he's raise calling 10-7 suited, because then he's also getting more 3-bets. I'm not going for Jack-10 suited for sure, because in general opponents are just not opening wide enough. I think my opponent is probably min raising something like this, and he's calling pretty much Or actually, let's make it a bit simpler. I think he's min-raise calling and min-raise shoving. Actually, these hands he's not min-raising that often. I think something like that is going to be most likely, that something like King Jack or King Queen suited as well. But I think most of these good suited he would more likely to be shoving than. And I don't think that. I think that mostly he will be raise folding the weakest aces, if something. That would be like my expectation. And my range would still include Jack 10 suited. And his calling range would have the top of the range, so yeah, it looks like pocket pairs I probably would shove. Probably not deuces, but something like fours onwards. And deuces because I think that opponents aren't folding enough when we are just 8 big blinds deep. And Neo, I think that we should call him with Skype and ask, like, I don't understand the idea with raise calling with 10-7 suited, because I think like 10-7 suited, if it would be good as a shove, and it could be decent as a raise fold, but as a raise call I'd say don't do it. I would need to be shoving so wide for it to be profitable for him to call. Like if I'm plotting range versus hand equities on mental and going for 10-7 suited, I would need to be shoving something like 35% here for it to be profitable for him to raise call with 10-7 suited. Like if I would think about in here, like this is the shoving range. If I'm doing a range or doing a bit of a ranging here, I think like if I'm creating decent shoving range for him, I think I would be going for something like, or raise calling range. I'd go probably from 9s up or 8s up, and then I would include the most solid aces. And my raise folding range would have most of these hands that are going to be like minus 0.05 and something like less than 0.10. And there would be plenty of those hands, like 10-7 suited would be on the raise fold range then. So raising 10-7 suited might be okay, but raise calling it isn't. So and in here Stingmogi opened for a bit less than 5 big blinds. I called because this is like 5-handed close to the bubble. And then there is the question that is this going to be a good call? I'm saying it should be. I'm not risking that much because I'm the biggest stack by far. Of course I don't have that much to gain either, but this is going to be all about risk and reward. And it would, if our opponent is shoving 22.5%, which is going to be quite reasonable, and it's probably going to be wider than a general opponent is going to be shoving, then ace-9 suited is going to be right on the edge. So I think right now that I'm looking at the numbers, I'm thinking that I probably screwed this one up. I think our opponent's ranges are a bit out of shape, that they are not including enough of the suited hands, but they are including more aces than they should, and they are including any pocket pair here. And if I'm looking at it again, I think even with the lopsided range, then ace-9 suited is going to be even worse. So ace-9 suited, I think or ace-9 off is going to be a mistake to call in this situation. But it's not going... It's actually going to be a worse mistake. So it's going to be a sizable mistake to call ace-9 off here. Pocket fours, I didn't think that they are going to be good enough. This is from the same game. So let's see it. If Massimo opens for 45%, then it's also only going to be sixes plus. And then we are going to do a vanilla test on if it's going to be okay even if our opponent is opening any two. And then it would be just positive. So pocket fours, it's not going to be a good call in here. Pocket sixes is. And also we can't make this guy open any two, especially when there is one smaller stack. And he doesn't have a really good folding equity here. This is an interesting situation. I think the Nash range in here is going to be surprisingly tight, even when we are only risking about 2 big blinds. And in here it's also... Oh, it's going to be any two, so it's not tighter than we thought. And on pawn, it's going to be good for him to call. Actually, that was a bit surprising that it's the range that Ampon should be calling is that wide. And this guy, this Ting Mogi, he's having 1.4 big blinds. So he had like 265 chips. He made a mistake by calling here. And that's all. I think in here we think that this opponent is going to be tighter. I think like this Ting Mogi's mistake can be more. With the 5 deuce off, it's 4% of the prize pool, I think. And 4% of the prize pool, it's going to be huge. And 4% of the prize pool, it's like, if you are doing this kind of mistake, and you are not doing like, you are playing exactly break even before this hand. For this tournament you have made like minus 40% ROI mistake, so... And if I would be shoving and he would be calling, then 5 deuce off is going to be as much positive as it was now negative, so... And it's only when Ampon is calling, then it's going to be... Then it's going to be sick. And if I'm plotting myself against pocket queens here, I need to be shoving only 15%, so his call was great in that situation, even if this guy calls practically nothing. Well, it doesn't move his range at all, so those are all pretty solid hands against my any two range. But this is like, this guy destroyed a ton of his own equity. And who did gain it? This guy was the gainer of it. I think he just didn't understand the situation. He thought that he's going to have such a short stack, so he'll need a double up here. Like watching one too many VSOP recordings or something where... Man, I need to double up, I'm so short stacked. and not thinking about equity, thinking only about chips. But tournament poker is all about equity, it's not about chips. In here, it was asked that if 7-8 suited is going to be solid enough. I think it is. But let's check it in Hold'em Resources calculator. This should be a quick one. And yeah, Mr. Morse Code, he might have the advance action. Oh crap. No, this was not the same hand. This is the hand. I thought that, wow, I made such a huge mistake. If we are thinking about Nash ranges here, 8-7 suited is going to be well inside the Nash ranges. And then we all look like Nikospas is a solid reg. I don't think that he's going to be wider than that. Grinsen wins. I think he might be even less active than that. And Confusion, I think he's likely to be even tighter. So I think at most that. Even though he's getting quite good odds, but I think in general unknown players are not calling enough in these spots. And then my range is going to be pretty much like this, and I would shove any hand in this range. So 8-7 suited is something that I think it's going to be a sizable mistake if you are not shoving it. And of course, I think only action that you can even compare would be to min-raise this and trying to achieve more fold equity and achieve some all-in situations that you can then dodge an all-in with this. So I think min-raising would probably be even better in this situation. But I think folding this hand is going to be a mistake. Queen 5. We'll remember the hand. Fresh fish open, 5 big blinds. This is going to be a mistake to call. Let's copy it. It's going to be close, but I think it's going to be a mistake to call. Wow, I need to decrease the future game simulation for that hand, or it will take forever. Nothing wrong with an analysis session that lasts forever, but I think I would be out of topics to speak about quite quickly. If UTG shoves 30%, which is going to be wider than I generally think, then even Queen 5 suited is not going to be a call. Even though we are getting insane odds here, we are getting 35%. I think ICM taking into account it's still going to be about 37-38%. But our opponent would need to be open such a freaky range here. Right now I think that it's going to be somewhere around 70 or 80%. Actually 45%. I think that it's still never gonna happen, so it's more of an academic interest in this situation. I think even 30% range for opponent to shove is wider than most guys are really shoving. This was actually interesting because I don't think that we can get a good idea from Hold'em Resources calculator even if we are using the future game simulation. And this is a hand that a future game simulation can't do correctly. In here the idea is that this cola guy can't call because I'm going to be all in before him and he's going to have a way better chance to getting in the money if he just folds this than if he calls here. Even with ace king off, that is something like 65-67% favorite against close-ups range. I think it's going to be a mistake to call this. And you can say that like you can put just enough future game simulation, like 2 hands, so Aarnimetsa would be all in. But the problem is that when HRC is calculating those future game simulations hands, it doesn't take future game simulation into account. So when this hand would be calculated with the 2 hands future game simulations, when Aarnimetsa will be all in on the second hand, the first hand calculated would not be with future game simulation, where Cola would be on the small blind and then it would make him to go all in against close-up a lot on the first future game simulation hand, which he also shouldn't do because of the game situation on the table. And this is something that you can't use, like you can't use the software to look this, you need to use your brain to see the future game simulation situation in here. And this is probably something that I should write an article or something about, because this is something that is not that self-evident, but it shows like how weird this bubble situation was in the game. And this was also interesting that I shoved pretty much any 2 cards here, and there is a smaller stack, and this guy calls me with ace-7 off. And I don't think that's going to be a profitable call, even when he is so far ahead of my range. I just think that ace-7 off is not going to dominate enough of my range. Oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. I thought that it's going to be a mistake for him to be calling, but apparently it's going to be a really good call for him. Yeah, I overestimated the ICM effect in here with only 1 smaller stack, so it's actually a really good call because he's getting insane pot odds to call. And he's so far ahead of my range in here. No, this is the right hand, so... And this is actually the second time that I was wrong that our opponents can go a lot wider. So, in here I thought that ace-7 off is going to be too weak of a hand because it doesn't dominate practically anything from my range. And there is going to be problems for him, and when he's going to get like the second place by just folding, that he should, but it's only a 10% price pool jump, so he needs to be more aggressive 3-handed than 4-handed. Like, if this would have been a situation when there would be a situation like this, I think then he would be closer to just folding. Like, if we would be in a 4-max bubble, he could only call us with 8s and ace-king suited, even though the ICM situation would be really comparable. So that's also a really big difference. And if we are thinking about the situation again, let's go to the hand details and copy it again and paste from clipboard. even if we are looking at this like from the 6-max structure, I think in 6-max structure it would still be a lot worse. And ace-7 off would be actually right on the edge. So this is an ICM heavy situation, and we can see that when the price structure in 3-handed 9-max is 75/25, like everyone already has 20% of the prize pool, and the guy that's getting third, he's getting an extra 10%, and the guy that's getting first is having an extra 30%. When we are comparing 10% to the remaining 40%, we are seeing it's only 25%, and when we are comparing 30 to the remaining 40, so it's going to be 75%. So there is going to be just small differences in price pool can have huge impacts in ICM heavy situations. And that's why knowing your game can have a huge impact in your win rates. And I think it's going to be the last hand, and I thought that, well, I'm doing something like an hour session, and here we are 2 hours later. I hope it was an interesting session for you. I think there were a lot of hyper-specific situations, and I think there are a lot of basic hyper situations, and you probably got a good idea how quickly the hypers are becoming harder. So like how many more regs that we can see if we are going from 1.5 to 3.5 to 7s and to 15s. But I think still, even the 15s that we played today, we did play them completely without any game selection. I think that a good player will still make money in those games, but I don't think that even a good player without game selection would make a lot of money in the general $15 games. So even a little of game selection might make a huge impact there. And I think that's about it. Thanks for watching, and if you are watching this on YouTube, please press the like button and subscribe to our channel. It makes a huge difference for us. And I think next Sunday we'll be back with something different. I don't know it yet, so please leave a comment on our forum thread about the feedback so that we can know that what you would want to see the next time around. And if you are, what a Merry Christmas you should have, because it's going to be Christmas time in just 3 days. Hope you get a lot of presents, and if you are playing poker on Christmas time is the most awesome time to play poker because money is really easy during Christmas. I don't know why, but all the time that we have played poker on Christmas, the tables have been completely awesome. So that's a top tip for you. When it's Christmas, play poker because it's going to be easy money that time around. Especially if you're a professional poker player. And if you are going to sleep, well, have a good night. And if you are still playing poker, may this be a winning night for you. Bye!